Welcome back to the Canadian Cannabis Podcast, part of Respect My Region's 2022 North American Weed Tour. I'm your host, Jordan Fleury of Flourish Ventures Limited. Joining me today, a special guest I can't wait to hear everything that Anuraga Mandava of Qualium Consulting has to share with us today. With no further ado, Anuraga, please introduce yourself and tell listeners and viewers a little bit about who you are and what Qualium Consulting is, and let's hear a little bit about the startup and everything about your entrance into the legal Canadian cannabis industry.
Thanks, Jordan. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me here. And hello to all the viewers of this podcast. And to give you a bit of background of what I do or how the consulting even started, I'm still fairly new into the cannabis world, on the growing side especially. My background has been food, pharmaceuticals, natural health products, and stuff like that. So when the legalization happened, and how the regulations have molded towards having a QAP, and the releases and everything has to go through the QAP and all that, the requirements and qualifications, I sort of felt I would be a good fit in that. And I started learning about cannabis and everything. I worked in the industry for a bit, and then we ended up moving from Manitoba to Alberta. At that point, I already had a bit of a contact in the cannabis world, especially with the micros and craft operators in the industry. I thought there was a vacuum in how they needed regulatory help and compliance help. So I thought I'd try my luck at consulting. And since then, I've been working with some amazing micros, amazing growers. I've learned a lot from them. And that's in that process, I met Jordan and I learned a lot from him. He is an amazing resource for me.
I,
So that's how it ended up being.
I appreciate you, Anuraga, especially. Breaking that ice right there and going into that perfect introduction. Thank you very much for sharing that, especially because exactly that. Your reputation precedes, like supersedes everything, no matter what. Some of the micro growers, and starting in Manitoba. So my introduction with Anuraga, for any followers to the Flourish Ventures Limited platform, are definitely aware that, and I don't know what to say, almost pinballing it back, but my introduction to the industry came firsthand with connecting with yourself. Right off the bat, learning about the Canadian tracking and licensing system, the CTLS under Health Canada's regulatory affairs through the Cannabis Act, and really kind of put me in a position of having to start to navigate and explore what that would look like. And for anyone, realistically, being a guest on the North American Weed Tour last year myself, that story carried into to those episodes of how I was even a guest then, being in the system, exploring possible license applications for processing, for cultivation, what that would look like. And realistically, what it did when it comes down to it, exploring those avenues, was while the regulations were unfolding, leading me down this path, like multiple paths to that, including grow site tours, where Anuraga was familiar or had like a residue in that space, where I was meeting with marketing directors, that were familiar to you. So especially starting up in Manitoba and then broadening out to the west, but basically holding on and capitalizing. So that growth in the consultation space, how limiting or like advanced being a startup in Manitoba, what type, like beyond the education and what were the strong points here? What kind of led to you looking at going west? And how has that played out as far as the service you've been providing for Albertans now, say primarily, or across Canada, and some of the regulations behind the scenes provincially, as opposed to starting up in Manitoba, let's say where recreational grow rights were not being practiced, for example, or even other setbacks for medical growing, and as opposed to provinces where recreational grow and medical grow is very common, you know what I mean, like closer to the west. But how has that played out in the backdrop of some of your ability as a consultation service, depending on where you are in Canada? Can you explain a little bit about that, how that plays out?
Like you said, yes, I do work with clients across Canada. A majority right now, because I'm located in Alberta, it's much easier for me to travel to the client site and whatnot. So it makes it easier for me to deal with Alberta based micros a lot more than other provinces. But also with compliance and quality, and also how COVID has made us or pressured us into getting everything set up on a remote basis or a virtual basis. Like right now, exactly how you're talking across provinces and just on a virtual media. So that sort of helped me in working with a few clients across Canada. So most of the quality work can be done on a remote basis. Once in a while, I go to the site and actually see what's happening. And I have a few associates who work with me. So one of us would be going to the site and working from site and whatnot.
Very cool.
Um, Comparing between Manitoba and Canada or Alberta, there are a few differences, but overall, pretty much every cannabis license operator is sort of in the same boat. They have to work through the regulations and start growing. And once you grow, you have to. On the recreational side, yes, the provinces are dealing with all the sales. Medical side, it's a lot easier. But if you're going and growing it on your personal at home on the personal basis, then it's completely different. You don't have to deal with much regulations other than in Manitoba. You're not allowed to do it unless you have a license to grow.
Right.
So yeah, there are some of those nuances, but I think overall, there are some amazing growers that can grow amazing products. I guess, yeah, if you have a good product and a product that can speak for yourself, I think, or for itself, I think you're facing challenges slightly less than the other ones.
Very cool. Very cool. So I obviously the the level that you've reached now. You were recently a guest speaker at the Grow Up Awards in
Yeah,
Toronto.
yeah.
And did you happen, and Hall of Flowers was happening there? I mean, it must have been pretty exciting. I know the Joey Bravo, Jay Ping, you know what I mean? Joey Bravo, COO of Respect My Region, made his way up to Toronto. So you know what I mean? The US, they're really looking at, that's the second event this summer that the crew made it up to. It's an exciting time, obviously, looking at some of the projections down the line for regulation changes as we're getting to that point. And while we're talking about Manitoba inclusively, and why I'm asking that, obviously, most viewers know the Toba Grown initiative here in Manitoba. Jesse Lavoie of Toba Grown is recently out to Montreal. The Supreme Court of Canada, the trial is going to be taking shape here starting on the 16th already last week, and then unfolding. So Manitobans and Quebecers, obviously Canadians, anticipating and looking at what lies ahead for next spring, I guess, grow season, potentially Manitoba on the radar for recreational growing. Now, that could be obviously coming from my perspective, shaping it back around to our introduction, how you helped me navigate the system, which realistically, in the end, couldn't have lucked out any crazier because obviously, Anuraga, you know, so at the time of one exploring the opportunities of possibly becoming a licensed producer myself, being involved medically, you've allowed me that opportunity. We're connecting some of the dots, Purity IQ, where we became involved. Anyone knows Purity IQ through Health Canada, they can expect to find Qualium Consulting. Your trademark is very commonly floating in those spaces, those education spaces. That's you know what I mean. And again, coming up to the Grow Up Awards, all of that kind of fantastic information going that way. But more importantly, like bringing me to the table, for example, and not like for anything particular, but just as navigating those systems, getting into education, taking the cannabis specialization, the industry specialization program that I had. You had me at the table a couple of times talking with even scientists out of like the phyto extracts out of Montreal that way. Some of the big players, Manitoba, Delta 9. I mean, you're familiar with, you know what I mean? And finally, and watching it kind of all grow to the level, but maintaining this, we come to the realization ultimately the the setbacks, the startup, everything included, the infrastructure, the regulation requirements, becoming a licensed producer, including the lands, which we know at pushing it to that extent where I had made arrangements to discuss with municipal offices, land zonings, exploring all of that stuff. Turns out maybe that's not exactly what I would want to be doing, but learning more about the marketing, the brand marketing regulations, the setbacks, the strict regulations that existed, that seemed to be lessening and lightening a little bit, but obviously working the kinks out. So there's still a lot of R&D and a lot of exploration going into that. And that brings me up to some of the events that are going to be coming out now that are folding out in Manitoba, some of the projects and work that I'll be doing through Flourish Ventures Limited, but ultimately stepping away from the CTLS as applying to be a licensed producer. But now we're going to be continuing to work together again in that same space, going forward with a different type of application, and really looking to get a stronghold with Flourish Ventures Limited in the cannabis education space here. And again, just blowing that up for Qualium Consulting as one of those players in the industry of look at what that involvement does. You know what I mean? Looking at what those relationships really do and emphasizing that the education component behind that. And so with that coming up, you know what, you can kind of get what I'm saying. So it's obviously the spaces are going to change, the education. And one of that is I'm going to be assisting as a guest speaker myself, which is a big maneuver for Manitoba. We haven't had too many pro cannabis events organized out here. I approached as possibly becoming a vendor as an education resource in that space. And it turns out I'm going to be doing some guest speaking and helping work out some of the project there. So, I mean, that alone, I can accredit some of that back to initially meeting you as a consultant, gearing me through a system where I had to manage to kind of sift everything out that doesn't really work. And here it is moving forward in some of the media, blogging and vlogging, right? The publishing, and then, of course, the education stuff. So not quite as a large scale as you yet, but definitely emphasizing some of those regulations that kind of really need to happen in Manitoba for someone in this line of work to actually move forward in the province. So it's been worth holding on, that's for sure, and kind of plugging away at everything that we do. But I guess with that, Anuraga, anything else that you want to add with that particularly? I know you were recently also at a Mary Jane Manor out in Alberta, which I think is worth a discussion here today on this episode, just emphasizing some of the other industry involvements. Plus, we'll be having them as a guest further down the line on the Canadian Cannabis Podcast, and really honing in on that culture, the community of everything behind it. But if you wouldn't mind explaining a little bit about that, like the importance of those spaces changing as we move towards some of the consumption lounging projections, the projects you and I are going to work on in Manitoba education wise, and introducing the public safety and the actual regulations behind those spaces and what that kind of could entail. But if you don't mind to share a bit of that recap of some of those areas you've been this summer, including the Grow Up and speaking there, Hall of Flowers, Mary Jane Manor, anything like that kind of really emphasize the importance for those industry shifts for other markets to really kind of flourish, so to speak. So plug that in there.
Okay, going back a few what lines ahead. I'm not that large scale. I'm still in a very startup stage. So I'm also growing, and so is the industry. No pun intended. But there is a lot of the industry is evolving. Every day there is something new coming up. A different way of understanding the regulations that's already there. There are a few federal regulations, few provincial and few municipal. So the way you were talking about the zones, a lot of people actually think that dealing with Health Canada is one of the complicated things. Wait until you actually start looking at a site and start building a grow up or a processing unit.
Right.
Then that's the most complicated thing that you have to deal with, the zoning laws, especially each province and each municipality, and again each county, they have their own regulations. So there are some counties and municipalities where even if one person opposes the to have a cannabis related business in that area, then that's it. The zoning won't be permitted. So there is still that kind of a taboo, and that's where events like these grow up. Or I went to another event a few months ago, sometime in April, in Kelowna. It was organized by BC Craft Co-op. It's a co-op that they want to be the industry unified voice in BC for all the legacy growers who want to come into the legal side.
Right.
So there are a lot of these grassroots organizations. Even in Alberta, we have ACMLA, the Alberta Cannabis Micro License Association. So there are so many of these grassroots organizations that want to become that unified voice so that they can bring much more stronger voice from the industry to the regulators,
Mm-hmm.
no matter at what bureaucratic level it is. And actually, one of the good thing that happened after all these lobbying or the talks with the bureaucrats, Alberta has become very open for, or at least considering consumption spaces,
Mm-hmm.
as long as it's a private event. And that's how Mary Jane Manor came out to be. Serena Donovan, she owns Because You Can. They're a micro cultivator and processor in a rural part of Alberta, about I think an hour or so drive away from Calgary. So she opened this hotel, and she wants to make this hotel as an open consumption space or a safe space where anyone can go in and try different cannabis products and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of these new businesses coming up, and like you mentioned, there is still a lot of research that still needs to be done, especially in the rec market. The emphasis has been so much on THC. We have to educate people and consumers that THC is not the only thing a cannabis is known for. There are other cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. And I just heard about thiol from another person I met the other day. I'm like, oh, there are a lot of new things in the industry, and we have to learn about that. And research is the only way that we could bring all the focus away from THC to all these amazing other products that have different sorts of health benefits in the when consumed.
Yes. I agree. That's a strong point. It's a discussion I actually just recently had as well with an LP. One of the recent guests. I think it was actually on episode. Might have been off and on the side discussion, but it's very similar when it comes to that THC stigma, like the stigma that's still there or the stereotype. But more importantly, beyond that lack of education, there's still that education gap publicly based on strict brand marketing regulations realistically, where we have say business owners or whoever, LPs or retailers entering the cannabis space that don't really bridge that education gap. And so you have that even trickling down from like bud tender, right? So like there's still that THC stigma, and it's not like it's almost being indirectly supported because of that lack of education. That's really right there at the forefront on 400 plus terpenoids, and terpene profiles. Pardon me, and the flavonoids and what you mentioned there. I'm gonna have to search that up. That's totally new to me. I have no clue what that is, but sounds excellent. It's good to know. So I mean, right there, that already changes some of the education materials that are already being floating around for the last 18 months, and that's still gonna keep changing that way. But yeah, like what do we do in the meantime? How do we get that alleviate some of that stereotype and stigma so that we're not trickling that barrier as common workplace practice for customer bud tender relation, for example. And as part of what I'll be doing an episode here later this evening on my usual Sunday, but emphasizing that brand rep bud tender relationship. Just in that, and for me, it's an important process because I don't look at it in my workplace or in the industry here in Manitoba at the retailers that I visit and shop at or however. It's evident where it is, where that lack of the component of proper education is realistically there, or not proper education, but evolving education.
Yeah.
Growing with it and the changes. So you hit spots where you have people that are fantastic. They're up stuff on everything. You can leave with your product and and content, so to speak, to research and find out new. Like speaking with you, then there's spots where it literally is just high THC shopping. It's what's the highest THC with the cheapest, and that's kind of the way it's being sold as well. The sale pitch is there, and then it represents within the showcase. So you kind of, but that's where more importantly I look at it. Like I don't hold it to the store themselves, you know, the backbone or the backdrop behind the scenes, the face of those companies. Either way, it really is reflective of the need for that market, that industry shift that we're still going to be obviously taking shape with, and that's going to be the education portion of it, a lot of that. So it kind of brings me up too. So the one, it's tourism, it's impacting, that's going to another industry that's going to kind of mesh with it all. You know, if you've seen through obviously the Respect My Region platform, the that meshing of music and food, the culture of cannabis essentially. So bringing those other industries into play and kind of working those collaborations. But tourism ultimately is where it's looking like. How is that not, and how is that not going to be a successful maneuver across the country when the time comes? Again, still, even though it's not quite on the radar all the time, but like coming out of the COVID recession, so to speak, and it's just quite important because here in Manitoba, at a breakthrough time, possibly we could be looking at. So the other day, I hit up 7 shops, and 4 of them were already completely established for consumption lounge spaces, and 3 of them actually, 3 of them are within a 5-block span on one stretch in Portage Avenue. So I mean, the market is already going to be. It's going to be a saturated market, obviously, too. And that discussion I have with bud tenders right now and other store owners that aren't gearing up for it, and some of their projection on it. And I mean, so again, I'm looking at that research and going around hitting the beat, and I'm starting to kind of see it. So we are at Pot Life Cannabis and Vape Shop. That's an anticipation for us, is looking at entering that the consumption lounging. And our owners, Bob and Amon, they're no stranger to the entertainment industry. They run one of the most busy clubs in Winnipeg as it stands. So I mean, as those kinks we work out as a team there and kind of get that all going. If we can talk a little bit about how we might be looking at working at some of those spaces here beforehand as a build-up for the industry and Manitobans and LPs, brands, where we could be looking at occupying those spaces for educational purposes, with collaborations between people like yourself and I, and Respect My Region, other brands and clubs that way. So maybe if you could explain a little bit about that, if we look at that for now and how we can, why not share that, right? If retailers that we share this out with can kind of tune in, maybe we can start to work with them, track us down, and look at which ways we can start to. And I broke the ice with one of these shops the other night, Anuraga. So I have another space that's definitely willing to look at having us in for educational purposes. They're very tight with the LGCA, very good, healthy communication and relationship. And they're moving ahead with a number of other cool things. So getting into those spaces is obviously going to start to happen. But for anyone that's listening, that's looking to get in the industry as we make these moves and kind of trailblaze it all, share a little bit about what we're going to look at that way. What can we expect? What can I expect? What can the retailers expect by looking ahead and start to contact us for that type of maneuver? As I like to say, we're making moves. Obviously, it's time to cook.
Definitely. I guess for me, this kind of an education element that has been lacking in the industry. It hasn't been always there. Before it was like, yeah, you a friend grew for you, and you're just buying it off of him. That was the kind of the scenario, at least from what I understand, with my limited knowledge in the cannabis industry. So, uh, for me, I'm a complete outsider to the industry. I have never consumed before, and I actually, okay, to be frank, I knew that I used to think that cannabis, when someone is consuming cannabis, I always thought that it was a leaf. I didn't even realize that there was a flower for the plant, and the flower is what is actually useful. So for me, meeting people like you and the growers I work with, they're the ones who actually got me into the industry and kind of understand the ins and out of the plant, what makes it work, and what affects the quality and whatnot. So for a person like me, I would like to have that sort of an education element, and I think the lack of communication or proper chain of communication from a grower to a bartender who is actually selling their product, and they're the bridge between the grower and your consumer.
Yes.
So when there is no proper chain of communication between all these different levels in the industry, um, yeah, obviously consumer will be thinking, okay, I just need to get high and I have to buy the cheapest and the most THC product. But not a lot of people even realize that you don't even need more than 20% THC. All you need is whatever strain works for you. And sometimes even 12% THC would get you high enough and you can't do anything.
For sure.
So we definitely need that education segment, and probably that's where the how you and I are going to work on, or what we were thinking about, that kind of research licenses or any of those aspects would come in,
For
and
sure.
also with provinces loosening their regulations on, or at least becoming open for farm gate type of a sale. So the
Awesome.
consumer can actually go into to an LP and see how the product is being handled. For a lot of people, this is medicine. So it makes sense for them to go to the grow site and see how their medicine is being handled, how their medicine is being grown and tended to, the story behind a brand. So that's what I guess comes into play, and that's how I'd like the industry to move ahead to more tourism, more consumption lounges, more farm gate type of sales.
Absolutely. And you've reminded me of a couple of things here. I know I went off for a minute. I was excited, very excited. And you've mentioned a couple of things here that are important to highlight. One, the low THC, 12% THC. Like anyone that has seen any of my decolonized cannabis platform on YouTube, I have reviewed product on that like very like close to 0% THC, like CBD flower. I've reviewed CBD flower and I give an honest opinion on how it actually affected me. More importantly, though, I had to learn about my endocannabinoid system for those episodes to even make sense educationally to anybody or and
Yeah,
to me. And how do I feel this baked? And I know for sure there's no THC in this, but that
right.
learning the body response, learning
Yeah,
about the entourage effect, yes, and then connecting like as a consumer, I'm in a different position. I guess to an extent, my ability to reach out to brands on any day is only growing, and I've amplified that. But it's there. The information, the contact information is the resources are there on every package for any consumer to follow up and find out more about the product, about the brand. But I've also hit those low THC and emphasized that or the higher CBD ratio and on how does that play out for again the education. Where is that education going to come? So trying to demonstrate that. And I mean, it's not but at the start of this episode, I'm sampling a product from Fresh Cannabis out from the West Coast. I'm going to be taking some time to do a little bit more because it's a different opportunity. It's going to be, and what I was emphasizing Friday, this brand rep bud tender, but as you mentioned it, LP brand, either way, bud tender relationship, and the importance of that when it comes to consuming for your everyday customer that is just coming in quick, in and out, quick shop, stop, and then gone, whether they become regular customers or not, right? So the importance in producing that out is I hit this alien jelly from a one hitter, just one small little puff at the 420 mark right before we went live here today. And at around 15 minutes in there, I went on that little ramble. But that, I'm talking like a 27% THC. I haven't looked into all of the cross genetics yet, what the exact potency or the terpene profile of this product. But that one puff at the level of the quality of this cannabis, like it's evident, it's in the video. It hit me there, right? And I was kind of like, holy smokes, like, there's the ADHD coming out. But that's very, very important to understand that this product here definitely doesn't I wouldn't even need to hit it as a full pre-roll or even rolling a joint by the obviously apparent effect by it. So, but taking that education now and kind of breaking that out for being able to share it as people, because it's coming from a brand rep that comes to our store. And yes, I'm a bud tender, and I had an opportunity to not promote the consumption of, but promote the education of this new to market product. So demonstrating in that video is the importance of that relationship. Why, when I'm consuming it, how I'm going to help that obviously as a sale pitch to consumers, and then also have them the direct educational resources to guide them to after to say, if you're not convinced, maybe check this out and see exactly what between the video description, between the information about the brand, where the product has come from, right? And then ultimately guiding it towards each individual of their own endocannabinoid system. So trying to push that information steadily is not always easy, because it's just it is preference, obviously, like purchaser preference, regardless, shopper preference. So sometimes it's not, but I look forward to that the most. So amplifying the educational space and really kind of getting that out there, what it is going to be like to actually consume some of these products, connect with the brand, and people to actually experience it in the industry right now, of taking that extra 15 to 30 minutes just to reach out and actually connect with some of the people that you're really working with closely in the industry. And even if it's not very often, right, just maintaining those. But so that's all coming either way. This type of thing I'm going to be hitting up and getting out there anyway. The consumption lounge is what another spinoff in that, why I'm explaining that and how that kind of fired for me at the time when you mentioned, that kind of got me so really excited about it. But the Winnipeg 19 Plus Expo. So Manitoba, LGCA, obviously working with a pro cannabis source, the Assiniboia Downs. And I'm now thinking it could be an opportunity for us, because I'm going to be looking at having a venue there regardless. I'll be in the area, in the space, as a guest speaker. But I'm wondering if we can't plug some of the education that we're going to be looking at right off the bat, because that's going to be inclusive to a number of vendors, and it's going to be local LPs or local retail stores, everyone already in the same space. Could be a great opportunity to really introduce some of the project that we want to roll out anyway, and then kind of get rolling that with all of that. So that's just super cool. Like, everything is slowly but surely coming to fruition either way, kind of hope hopefully it's like a valley effect, and it's all kind of just going to start pouring into Manitoba, because it's obviously a lot of players in the industry in Manitoba. You look at the collaborations locally between local retailers and local growers, and the way everyone's kind of unified really represents where we're lagging in the country, and where we kind of ready to blow it up that way. So yeah, I think unless there's any other products or brands that you want to drop or plug right now, what about some of the products you're working with now? How about this, as me, as a medical, as a patient myself, as a medical consumer, and let's say looking to hit up some new product? Is there any brands specifically that you're involved with where I can go for the full entourage effect and bring in all the knowledge I've absorbed from you as an individual, to taking in some of the brand that's repping some of that education you've helped, that that you've had your hands in as well? Anything like that out there these days that I could find in Manitoba or in Canada?
On the medical market, definitely. There is one company that I am a QAP for. So I've seen that particular product from the clone stage to the finished product stage.
Awesome.
It is listed on Mendo Medical, or Mendo Cannabis. It's called, the brand itself is called Alien Rock Candy. That's the genetic the genetic name,
Very
and it's listed as that. I'll let my grower actually explain a bit more into how exactly the effects are, but it is of a 23 to 27 THC, and terpenes about 3% on an average,
very cool.
and it's one of the beautiful smells and looks I've seen so far.
It sounds dynamite for sure.
Yep,
Alien rock cookies,
Alien Rock Candy.
alien rock candy. Awesome.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome.
On the recreational side, though, there are a few growers that I've been closely working with, and you can find them across Canada. But also, it depends on the particular batch and the particular strain and whatnot. There are a few listed in Manitoba. You may be able to find them. One of the companies is called Parkland Flower.
Right.
You probably heard about them. They used to be pretty big before their grower is one of the amazing growers I've met.
All right.
Their products are all across Canada. There is another Dry Island Cannabis. Their products are also across Canada, and Northside Grow. These are some of the companies that we closely work with, along with Because You Can from Serena Donovan.
That's exciting, Anuraga. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely will be hitting up some of that. I'm going to be looking for the atomic rock candy, no matter like the alien rock candies, no matter what. We'll see what I can do for if I've got to order them in or however. But they
Oh,
sound
definitely.
fantastic.
Yep.
Sounds if they hit anything like this alien jelly I'm playing around with today, then yeah, I would definitely be looking forward to trying some of that out. So
Awesome. I'll be waiting for your review on that.
for sure, for sure. I appreciate you. Awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're just past the 30-minute mark. It's been another fantastic episode. Again, any subscribers or followers to the Decolonized Cannabis platform and Flourish Ventures Limited know the history and business relationship build up between Qualium Consulting, Anuraga, and myself, Flourish Ventures Limited. You heard it here today where everything's going. Going to be looking at some new education platform rolling out. Flourish Ventures Limited, I guess, also as well. I'm going to be involved with the Winnipeg 19 Plus Expo. Going to be more than thrilled to share some education as a guest speaker in that space. And coming soon, I'm just starting to explore. So we're down to about 10 T-shirts at Pot Life Cannabis and Vape Shop. That'll be the last of this original order for Flourish Ventures Limited. And for fall and winter, going to be looking at a little bit, playing around with some new promo products and some materials that way, or merch either way, and some swag. Not sure yet what to do. Going to be looking again as a promo package, working with a new print shop, and I'm excited about that. They're a very cool crew of hipsters down in the market here in Winnipeg. Definitely familiar. Endo Clothing, I'm just going to throw it out there. Either way, we're following each other. So I'm looking forward to working with them from here on in and continuing to build the Flourish Ventures Limited brand. So with no further ado that way, Anuraga, I'm going to turn it over to you to close things off for us. I could talk for hours, obviously, but much appreciated. You've definitely nailed it today. I think it's worth sharing this out anywhere that we possibly can. That's what I'll be doing. Expect to be tagged out on Instagram and LinkedIn after this, and just get it out there wherever we can, because we talked about some fabulous topics that impact the Canadian industry and Canadians alike either way. So that's my 2 cents. Anything you want to say in closing, Anuraga, please share it now. Where can people find you, your website, anything that way, the easiest way to get a hold of you, and take us home.
Awesome. All I can say is thank you for having me. I can be reached at either through my website, qualiumconsulting.com, or Anuraga Mandava. Just search for my name on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm not that active, but if I get a message, I'm definitely responding right away.
Awesome.